So this is pretty much going over Cold Plunge Stables. I'm Mike Sowers. Cold Plunge Stables is a new user to Photo Finish, and you kind of want to introduce yourself. Tell us how you arrived here and kind of what sparked your interest in Photo Finish Live to begin with.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. For everyone listening or going to listen, appreciate all of the warm welcomes. It's been unbelievable, frankly, because crypto is so toxic typically, but this is like its own little village or something like that, nestled away in the mountains from rest of crypto Twitter. So it's been fantastic. And I got into this literally, I think, so it was last Friday. I was originally in Zed back in, March of 21 is when I got in Zed and was pretty heavy in that, but faded out pretty quick. I mean, I don't even think I finished the year of 21. So I burned bright and burned fast on Zed. But back in March, I was watching Poseidon videos back when he was first streaming on Zed, like March 2021. And so on Friday last week, Zed sunsetted, and I was sitting at my desk, and I just had this like wave of nostalgia because I was like, oh man, like those were the good times. That was when things were fun. And so I just went to YouTube to rewatch one of those original videos, and I saw Poseidon had posted 7 months ago something about a new horse racing game, and so that was like, wait, there's a new game? Like, oh, okay, I'm intrigued by this. And so I just watched the video, and he was talking about breeding, and the game just looked, one, more realistic, two, the level of depth. And I mean, it was way over my head. I had no idea what I was looking at, but the depth and kind of nuance to it that I saw just in that video, I was like, this is cool. So I think I created my stable last Friday night after I put my daughter down to bed.
So exactly 1 week ago.
Yeah, 1 week. Yep.
Wow.
And then Saturday, then like last Saturday, I finally had time to like sink my teeth into it. And I moved some USDC over, and I kind of pot committed myself a little bit. And I mean, I spent 6 hours. I think I went to bed at 2 a.m. Last Saturday, and this is what we're staring at now, which is 29
so what
horses.
resources did you use to kind of learn about the game, and then kind of like, was it easy to kind of digest for you as a new user and kind of breaking it all down, or kind of how was that process?
Yeah, so I mean, that learn to play tab that's right there on the icon. I just opened that up and I just started at the very top, and I walk. So I probably spent an hour. I just read everything here. I understood some of it. For me, and I think everyone's different, so it's hard to like, for every stable is going to be different. But like, I learned through doing and kind of learned through failing.
Yeah.
And so, it's like I read all this stuff. Okay, I kind of get it. But then it's like, okay, let's just go actually figure this out. Like, let's just start playing around and breaking shit. And so that was, I mean, like just reading this like chart right here. Like, I mean, I looked at it, I read it like 3 times. It's like, I don't know. And even now, that's one of the questions, right? Is, how do we actually start picking races? The only thing I've been running is claimers, and I have one horse that's in a juvenile stakes, or whatever that kind of qualifying thing is. And the only reason I know about that is because when I bought him, it said participating in a series. So I was like, oh, cool, what's this mean? So
Yeah.
that was literally how I figured out about all this stuff. Clicking buttons.
Yeah, and it looks like kind of just missed with that horse.
Yeah, I've
17
got one more
points.
race in 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah, this is where you asked me the other day about 6 or 7. This was the race that we chose,
Yeah.
and this was the outcome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I think that's informative. Like, mainly, if you're an experienced uh, photo finish person, this stream might not be the best for you. It's really going to be targeting, and it'll be posted to my YouTube channel to kind of help new users. So like, one of the things Cold Plunge has kind of shared with us is just this learn to play tab, kind of diving in here, getting kind of your feet wet. But then also, it looks like some of your first purchases, did you know to go to claimers, or did you go to the marketplace, or?
Yeah, so what I ended up doing was, I mean, my, proclivity is to sadly just buy stuff. Like it's fun buying horses, right? And so
Yeah.
first thing I went and I I asked ChatGPT, and so I was leaning on AI a ton. So I was like, hey, I want you to help me become, I think I told it like my prompt was like, a dominant stable. Like, what do I need to do? And so it's funny. They're like, oh, this, and I said the season ends in a week, and they're like, well, you should, prioritize getting a couple of this, a couple of that.
What did it say?
Yeah, let's
Did it give
see.
specifics like go look for this horse or
It didn't give names. It just said, essentially, oh, I think it was like, you could go get some full fowls that will be ready to run at the new season. Prioritize females. They're more expensive, but they're good to have. Something along those lines. And so when I went through, I just now I look back and I think my first three purchases was like ton of bricks, fowl of Catalaya. It was so basically like I got these S fowls. How do you say that? Foals, fowls,
foal?
foal.
So you are not. We can get that out of the way. It doesn't seem like you're big into horse racing in real life.
Not at all. Like
Okay,
no,
yeah, I
I've
wasn't
never
either.
attended a horse race in my life.
So have you played like a lot of mental games or just kind of been in the crypto sphere? Like kind of how did you even arrive, to want
Yeah,
to do this?
yeah. I mean, I don't play like. I mean, I don't gamble. Like, I mean, I haven't played poker in probably 20 years. Like, so it's none of those. I've been in crypto and Web3 since, like I said, just March of 2021, when I got into Zed. I work in finance. I guess it's maybe the only tie. I for some reason or another, like these are kind of things that just are interesting to me, and I think I've told people in the Discord is I love the learning curve, and I think I get bored pretty easily, and so it's fun when you have something that's stimulating and difficult, and it requires a lot of research and time and studying, and so like that's my style. My buddy who I got in here, I think yesterday, he was one of the guys in the rookie rally. That's not going to be necessarily his style, but he's really big. He likes these things. He comes from the daily fantasy world, right? So like,
Okay.
um, but this still appeals to him, right? So I think it's kind of diverse. But I've never done daily fantasy. Um,
Yeah, daily
no,
fantasy, I mean, it's been pretty much part of my life for 10 years. So I just love anything involving data where you're kind of using brain power to have a skill game. Obviously in DFS, poker, even this, there's a good range of luck and skill, and so I like games that combine those. Especially because a lot of times it's tough to figure out, am I getting lucky or am I winning because I'm doing things right? And then the opposite when you're kind of going through a downswing, like, am I playing badly here or am I just running bad? And so looking at like ton of bricks, I guess was probably like one of your first purchases. Looked like you paid about 1,000 Derby, and it looks like someone flipped this horse. Someone had bought it for $3, sold it to you for $12 basically. So they made a little nice 4x. And I think, yeah, this actually, it's funny. You've bought several of my old lines, my old bloodlines. So this was probably a horse that I sold to Carmeline. A lot of times I'll just cycle out bloodlines that are kind of, what I try to do is keep the top of my bloodlines. And if I have really redundant bloodlines that are way lower in grades, a lot of times I've been just selling those kind of for cost of the breed, which is probably what I did here. Yeah, it looks like I sold it back in December. And so one of the things that I'm seeing you do, not only with this horse, but also Perm, which is a horse that I've helped you a little bit with on deciding where to run, is buying low preference horses. And as a new user, probably the biggest cheat code that you could tell a new user is to try to target high preferences, because one of the things that we're seeing now is like horses that have 4.5 stars pretty much are very tough to be profitable. There are some that can be profitable in the barn because they have such high stats, but on the track it's really tough, and I think that you probably got a glimpse of that with this horse. You want to tell us a little bit about Perm, your first few races, then obviously this win? It looks like you bought this horse for $100. Is that right?
uh, yeah, probably. I mean, let's see. I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me.
Yeah, it looks
Whatever you
like,
think it's saying in
yeah,
the
yeah.
ledger. And I'm looking back. So the horses that I have to race, the first night Saturday when I realized that all the horses I was getting, I wasn't even going to be able to race them. So like one of the differences with the Zed is you can still race horses even if they're not, like I can breed and race them. It's not like they've got to sit on my bench. I have to retire it and then they never get to race again.
Uh-huh.
And so I kind of going through. I was like, wait, I don't even get any instant gratification. Like I have nothing that I can run. I have a week that I have to wait, or that's And
Yeah. And
so
sometimes that could be 4 weeks or even 8 weeks if you buy a 0-year old, the
yeah,
first day they're born.
and so like Saturday night I was really bored, and I really wanted to have something Sunday to look forward to on racing. And so I just started looking for stuff that I could race. Um, I don't remember the thought process and why perm stood out to me, to be honest with you. I wish I could.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
you're new.
funny,
I mean,
like,
you're just like seeing a horse. You obviously know that by this time you know the grade system, right? So you
yeah,
kind of
and
know that S plus is pretty much one of the top grades you can get.
correct. And so I was looking at it. I didn't realize that the prefs, like you guys call them,
Hmm.
right? That those were so OP. And my thought process is that's so obvious. Oh, they're putting it right there in front of us. Like,
Uh-huh.
why wouldn't everybody just buy the horse that had the most stars? What's crazy is now, like, it sounds like that's what you should absolutely be doing to some extent. But
Hmm.
I was like, oh, there's no way it's that easy. And then I kind of thought, well, maybe they're just saying, and I couldn't really understand. I understood on like the soft. It's like, well, if he's 1.5 stars on soft, that maybe means that he can be more diverse and he could run on, you know, not just sloppy tracks or not just super soft. Maybe he can run on, good or yielding or, that I was thinking there was like, that's how all the stars applied and it wasn't more of an OP type thing. But yeah, I came in here and I do remember seeing the Puka Nakua and I was like, holy crap, this guy's got all these S's. Like, this is incredible. And I was just more starstruck because when I first started looking, even seeing one S, SS or SS minus felt like it was the biggest, coolest thing to see. So I was kind of enamored with that. I was like, oh, this guy's got some sweet bloodlines.
Yeah. I mean, in RTS, like I've built this bloodline, so obviously I'm a little biased, but I remember when this stud first hit, it sold out pretty much the first 3 or 4 seasons, and it sold out about half last season. Um, and one of the reasons that I created this bloodline is I really like this horse Accolade, and I got really lucky with the heart here. And so this horse wasn't a winner, but if we go back and look at its odds, a lot of times you'll see in the odds. So this has 4 stars. So initially, I'm going to think that this horse probably isn't going to win, but I'm still testing most of my horses, etc. But the odds were decent and the reveal looked really good. So I remember someone like 3 or 4 seasons back when this thing first debuted in the stud barn, people were like, why are people going to Puka Nakua? Like, why would anyone go there? And a lot of the idea is in RTS, you have very tight bloodlines. So Churro, for example, is like kind of one of the bloodlines that's in everything. And then all of these other bloodlines are not in RTS at all. If you see Jupiter, most of these horses are firm. And then so it was a unique bloodline, but also hitting the SS plus heart, the high stamina and finish. To me, like you kind of can get lucky with the speed and temper depending on what horses you bring to this. And one of the things that I do with this horse is try to build on preferences to these stats. And so since I have a lot of horses, I can kind of do that. And you can see this one has 6.5 stars and it has some wins. So even though that horse only has 4 stars, it's kind of like if I take a 7, 8 star horse to it that's an S and I kind of can get lucky with the stats and the preferences, then it might be really good on the track. And I do think that heart is going to come more in play, but that's kind of one of the reasons why I built that stud. And it's kind of funny that you ended up with one of those horses and you kind of thought that that was a good bloodline, which now this horse is probably like a very mediocre stud. Like really the studs last for about 2 to 3 seasons and then they kind of, they're probably not as good. And just like the tool that you signed up for that I use a lot, Puka Nakua was like one of the highest numbers. And so all that is saying like SS equals a number. And so subgrade wise, some of the people talk about a plus or minus subgrade. So they would just say, all right, if an S plus should be stock S plus across the board. So if you have an SS, that's two points above an S plus. So you would give it +2. Then you would come to speed. It's 1 below S plus. So now we're going to subtract 1. So we're at a +1. And then you kind of do that the rest of the way. So stamina would be +2. Finish, it stays the same. Then when you get to heart, you're looking at +3, +4, +5. And then you're going down 2 for temper. So I think most people would call this a +3. And
Yeah,
so in
that's
S pluses,
unbelievable.
and in S pluses, we really don't get a lot of that. And we do see a lot of the best stat horses might not necessarily have the best preferences. And so that's part of the beauty of the game and the learning process is figuring out when you can go to those lower star horses and when you can't. And my advice, especially like to you or anyone in your situation when you're brand new, if you buy something, buy it with like 6 stars if it's an S plus. If it's like an S, I guess 6.5, 7 stars. And then the lower you go, the more stars you need because the population is way deeper. And so that's kind of like a beginner thumb rule that I would just tell people is like, don't try to figure out like, oh, this horse might be good stats, good enough stats to overcome the preferences. Because most of the time you're not going to be able to figure that out. And even me, it's kind of tough and I'll take some gambles on stuff, etc. But that's kind of just a beginner thing. And so then you got perm. Looks like you paid $100. You started racing this thing. It looks like you got 4th your first race. Then you got 5th, and then you ended up winning. If we had talked last Friday, I would not have told you to buy this for $100. A, which is cool, but that you made a mistake and that obviously you're willing to come on here and talk about that. And then B, like our expectation for this horse is really just getting experience for you. You know, beyond trying to make money, it's all about learning. And I think that like when you first learn, A, you kind of need to know about like what your disposable income and your budget can be. But B, just try to learn from stuff rather than beating yourself up. A lot of new people come in, they lose money, and then you can kind of get into this tearing yourself down mode where it's not really productive to kind of learning and growing.
I mean, I got super lucky when I won, and it was funny because, you know, I swear the game gave me the win only to just energize me, right?
The
They're like,
beginner's luck.
hey, rookie, we're going to give you this win. So we kind of keep you sticky and keep you in the game and interested for a long time. But no, I mean, it was exactly what it was, right? Like, I mean, I didn't know what I was, you know, I was looking at stuff that was blatant. And it was interesting because when I was going through all of this, I made a bunch of purchases. I think it was like that Saturday night. And then I wake up Sunday morning and on my Twitter feed was somebody talking, I think it was AI Paddock, had posted an article about subgrades. And I had no idea. Like I responded, I said, what do subgrades mean? Like, you know, and then he's like, and I read the article and I didn't quite understand. And then when it finally clicked, it was like, I go back through every horse that I bought. And I think the best I was like a -1, and I was like a -5 on some, right? I was like, okay. Oh my gosh, like the difference in 12 hours that I just read that article, you know, I would have saved so much money, you know. But again, like I don't even, that, I mean, don't even, when we get into like why I bought some more horses and then I started breeding stuff, I mean, that's going to be, it'll be comical. I was even ChatGPT when I put it in earlier. I was like, hey, this is the topics like, you know, I want to have in the back of my mind. And I told the story and it literally goes, you know, LOL, that's really funny and embarrassing. I think that's AI is telling me that. So
yeah, that is cool. And I think that what you can see is, you know, like for a new person out there, if you're buying a horse, you've not seen it run at all you have to go by are the parents and the stats. And really, most of the time, the stats come out kind of in the middle of what the parents are. And there's a lot of genetics at play, and there's alleles. And if you really want to go on a deep dive, you can do that. They've got so much going on in the genetics, etc. But basically, I think what's happened with this horse is it looks to me like you probably hit pretty good start somewhere. Like we wouldn't expect the speed to be good, and speed is usually like 6, 7, 8. And obviously the person who had this horse before you only ran it at 4 and 5. And then one of the things that I do after those first few races, or if I'm looking at a horse that's been on the track, is I always come down to this chart. And so this chart basically tells you the comparison versus your grade. And so if you're an SS minus, it's kind of tough because the population's way lower. But with S plus, you kind of get an idea of where you are on that chart. And ideally, we want all of our dots to kind of be where your 5 furlong unyielding was. We want it above the box. If we're above the box on a distance, that probably means that that's pretty ideal distance for us. Now, one of the things that a new person might not understand is yielding is always going to be faster times. Have you kind of learned that already or no?
No, and honestly, I just started using this chart, like understanding it, I think yesterday or the day before, and like I realized I could click on the different colors and get them off so I could see it easier too. And I was like, oh, like then it finally dawned on me what I needed to actually be paying attention to this chart. So, um,
Yeah, so I use a lot of this. I use this chart too because like this sometimes will have noise, like your results, you might just win every time there and still not be outside the box, but you can still kind of look at your results and know, that you're cashing there. And so the results for this horse have been at 5, and your best time has been outside the box at 5. Now, usually when I have a new horse, I'm probably going to test a lot of different distances, especially if we go back to the parent profile. You can kind of see that stamina and finish were in the sire, but being S minus on both the mare stats, we'll probably think that we're not as high as we would be in speed and start. So I think that you are running at the right place. The owner before you is running at the right place. And what I would expect is that this horse will have like SS minus start, and it might have S or S plus speed. And it looks to me like the temper is going to be low, and therefore you're going to have variance of results. So yeah, you can run
like a
really
67, like that I had right there,
Yeah.
and then it swings to an 81.
Yeah. And 81 on soft's pretty good, especially with these low stars. So anytime I think you're getting results out of these low star horses, you could really expect something to be under the hood. And I don't necessarily know how much breed value this specific horse will have just because of the low stars. But you can already see you have more stars than the father, Puka. So if you kind of even match stats with it, you would be more valuable. Now, you're probably not going to match the stats. You're probably going to be a little lower. But that's just kind of some of the things that we're looking at with this horse. And you've got it registered for, not this. Oh, yeah, this is today. Oh, the race is running right now.
Yeah, right now it just started.
Perfect. You couldn't have, we didn't even script that, guys. Awesome. So we're about to find out if you get to ride in the free roll. And riding in the free roll is kind of where all of the incentives for new players are, for experienced players. A lot of the schedule is really around these qualifiers to get into these free rolls and try to win. And this free roll specifically is at the end of the season. Next season, they're going to start having them every week. So there'll be 3 a month instead of just 1. And the total prize pool for the free roll you're trying to get into, I think, is 50K Derby, which is a little over 700 or a little under 700, I guess,
Got it.
bucks. And so what they'll do next season for the Juvies is split that kind of 3 ways. So it looks like we're in second now, and you at least have silks. I remember checking in on you the other day. It was still plain whites. Yeah, when you talked about kind of the realism, that's what got me into it. I was kind of doing NBA Top Shot when Zed was kind of taking off. Go to the front here. Come on. But that's kind of what got me into it. Like, I was never going to play Zed just because it wasn't very realistic. And you needed second or better to get in
second
there,
or
right?
better, and he's fallen off.
Yeah.
It's that 6. I mean, he needed to be in the 5.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just and we can kind of look. I know this MJ horse. This is a guy who's a good friend of mine since the very beginning, RVA. He actually won the Artemis Cup tonight, so congratulations to VJ. And I was actually almost to the point of telling him to come onto the show because it's been a while since he won a major. And so I was going to tell him that he needed to learn how to build some horses. But if you see the horse he has, it's pretty much a monster, and it kind of started slow. I was kind of big brothering this horse early with my horse, but looks like it just won there, and it's been a little inconsistent. But having this many stars on an SS minus
Yeah.
is
Wow.
really strong. And let's see, you can see like the mare. We wouldn't really expect this mare to be
No.
able to roll, but these high preferences going to another decently high preference horse. We could probably expect that it hit SS minus on the stamina, the finish, maybe the speed and heart, kind of. So
Yeah, I mean,
let's see where
so
he's
how
trending.
do you, I mean, obviously this went, S plus to an S plus and, converts to that SS minus. How is that process like when you're thinking about it? Because I've seen a bunch of S plus horses that have, a lot of SS related stats in them, but they're still S pluses. Like, what is it that gets a horse over, on the high end grade, gets it over the,
So what
into
we
that
do
SS minus?
know is that these stats, although they just have grades on them, they live in radials. So one SS minus isn't equal to another SS minus. And so there's horses that you'll see like this S, for example, has three S pluses and two S minuses. So really the global grade, this grade at the top left that kind of is the staple of your horse, is third times kind of algorithm adding up all the different radials, and I'm sure they have different thresholds. And so that's kind of what happens. And we can kind of look in breeding and we can just look at the SS minuses and kind of see like that is really what we're looking at and trying to build out. Like really you want the high end of the global grid. And so just looking at these two, you can see that this one is just way stronger across the board, right? It's like SS, SS, two SS minus stats. Well, this other SS minus has SS plus heart, SS finish, but S stamina and speed. It kind of makes it not that attractive because you
Yeah.
really want kind of a base of all the stats. But if you wanted to make a sprinter, this Hadaway would be really good because start and speed pretty much the highest combo probably in right turf. And so that's kind of what's going into that, and where the actual grade lies is still somewhat murky to me because I've had some horses that were S that have like four S pluses and were still an S. And I've had some S pluses that might have had one SS minus stat and an S plus and then all the rest S's. So it gets a little murky, and that's kind of the fun of the game, is kind of learning where the horse is good at, where the qualities of trying to explore and find where it's good. But like one of the things that we just saw in your race was you shot out to a good start and you were kind of there, and then those last two furlongs is kind of where your horse died.
Yep.
And so that's something we talked about where, oh, I guess this one isn't. Yeah, but I mean, we just watched it on stream, so we know what happened. Basically, to me, it looks like your speed is probably still the median S, and you probably have SS minus or even SS start. And so that four furlong is probably this horse's like best spot. But once again, with the low stars, etc., it's probably going to be a claimer horse or just a retire and see how you did. And like, I think even winning that one race, probably won you 150 bucks or so. Kind of, you're going to break even on this horse. And if you keep racing it, I would
Yep.
probably say you're probably going to lose money on it. So like,
I, I was just going to ask, he's, I mean, I guess we'll maybe talk about aging,
mhm.
and the prime. Like that was something I've read a lot about. Is so he's going to turn 3 in a couple days. Like, is it worth seeing if they improve as a 3-year-old, or talk about the age part?
Yeah, the aging is really murky in the game. It's probably the thing that I still don't understand the most. But basically, Ian shared a chart with us, and it was actually one of the biggest things that I was against before we went live. So, like when we were in beta, we didn't have aging, and so that was something he was going to add before we went live. And so when we went live about a month before, he kind of had a town hall meeting and he showed us this graph. And in this graph, it basically showed the different aging possibilities. And so some horses can just grow up right away, like the first 2 weeks. And we kind of joked around and called those horses like early pubes. And so you can get some horses that peak really early. You get some horses that peak from 3.5. Some horses don't even grow up and hit their peak until 4.5. And those types of horses, we really haven't learned a lot about the curve because the way the schedule is, the way the game is, especially if you're at the top or if you're a filly, the meta has been to retire to breed.
Yeah.
If you can't win on the track, why keep trying to lose money? And the schedule is starting to set up, especially for lower grades. If you don't have a lot of stud value as a colt, is where you kind of can look through because you'll start racing those colts, in claimers at 3 and 4 if they can't win in open stakes or grade restricted. And so the aging curve still, to me, as an experienced player now for 2 years, is still one of the toughest things to understand. And I would just say that, like, with this specific horse, sure, you might not have aged. You could have already aged quicker than others. We don't know, but what we do know is that the general stars, no matter the age, are going to make you not very competitive in these stakes races. There are going to be other places where you could potentially race this horse, like benchmarks or claimers, etc. But honestly, I mean, we'll see what happens 3. If you want to enter it in some more races, I would probably try to keep my entry low, and I wouldn't even mind putting this in low stakes claimers, and if it got picked, cool. And I would probably focus on 4 or 5 furlongs. That's kind of...
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a great point. And so what you had said is they can age within a season. So I was just thinking they age by season. So like, but you guys are thinking that, he could be a different horse week 1 of season versus week 4.
Yeah. And
Wow.
if we see that, like, this horse, we can't really zoom in on these things, but this is a horse that kind of didn't, this is a 4-year-old, and for the first 3 seasons, it was a loser. But on the odds every race were really good. And so I was like, well, this horse is probably decent, and I had qualified it for the Lineage Cup. So I was like, all right, I'll keep it on the track till at least 4 and just see. And then at 4, it actually came on, but it really only lasted, its peak probably lasted 2 weeks. So this is probably an example of the worst aging curve you could have, and it's a late ager that had a short curve. So you can have an early ager that has a long curve, or you can have a late one with a very small curve. And so a lot of us kind of hypothesized that this is a trait that is a genetic as well, and I think the team has kind of said that as well. There's a horse that we all know, pretty much all the offspring off of this horse, and you can see when this horse raced, it won 14-2 out of 16 races, which is just godly, and it just crushed, and it just won every race. So every horse, or at least most of the horses that I've hit, not all of them have been good and winners, but the ones that are, they all are early agers, so they all age 2 to 3. And really, the way the game and the schedule is set up, you really want to peak at 3, especially late in the season at 3 during the majors and stuff. But an early peaker is fine too, because you just don't lose money. You just keep winning money out of the gate, and that helps keep the horse on the track, etc. But this is just an example of an older horse that was an early peaker and, stayed peak. Obviously, looking at the stats compared to other horses of that time, it was relatively the same type of stat profile. So that's how we could kind of gather that this horse was an early peaker, even though it didn't really have the best stats, etc. And so that's just an example of that. And that is probably like one of the final pieces to learn, and probably the most murky even to me still. I'm not really certain of anything with aging, and I think the beauty of the game in itself is there are a lot of variables that are unknowns to us, and I think Ian's done a good job of kind of keeping his box hidden, telling us kind of things we need to know, giving us clues without kind of giving us the answers to the test.
Got it.
So
yeah, no, that's helpful.
So basically, and then we can kind of look at some of your other horses that you bought. Again, I remember when I first came into this game, it was before the game began. There's only like 3,000 horses in the game, and I bought an A grade left turf soft for I think 70 Solana, and so that was like $1,400 or even $800, I'm not sure. But I knew within a week that I had made a big mistake because I created a spreadsheet that basically showed me all the bloodlines. And in LTS, two of the most popular bloodlines for all the fillies were 9924 and 9925 PFPs. And you might not even know what a PFP is, but it's basically an example of the bloodline. And so because it was a generic bloodline, it wasn't worth probably like a fifth of what I paid. And so I think that no matter what, when you come into this game, I think you're going to make some mistakes purchasing. You're going to make some mistakes racing and really, kind of learning like this horse, I think is just fine as a purchase. I don't know what you paid for it. It looks like $8. And really, when I'm working with you or when I'm working with anyone, these are kind of the price ranges that I want people to start at. Like, I don't really care what your budget is, whether, I mean, obviously, if your budget is way lower, then maybe you want to start even less than $8. But let's say you told me you came in, my budget's $3,000. Well, I'm going to tell you, go race your trainer, and I don't think that racing trainer does that much. So buying a horse in a claimer or even watching claimers for a few days, the lowest stakes, and then buying a super cheap horse that has decently high stars that is unraced. A lot of times I don't think you want to buy these horses also that are like 2 and 3 year old if they've been raced. That usually means that the owner doesn't think it's a winner and they want some money back from it, Like if we go
Yeah.
look at all of the horses racing that are 2 that are on the marketplace, we can see probably a loser. You can be 2-1 and still down as a loser, low stars. So the marketplace is really tough to navigate as well. And it's kind of funny that you've been racing claimers. So what kind of inspired you to go to claimers? Because a lot of times I'm telling people go here to kind of buy some horses, especially like right now, it's kind of tough once you get to week 3, week 4, because you have a lot more establishment and you kind of know the good claimers are all racing high stakes. But whenever we have juvenile claimers coming up in a week and a week and a half, you're going to see a lot of horses on the track for $5, $10 that have never been on the track. So people don't know exactly what they are. And a lot of times what I like to do in those races is look at the odds. And the odds, let's say it's a $5 horse, but one horse has just the best odds. Like let me find one that's maybe a little deeper. Because usually I think in terms of 8, 12 horses, we'll just look at this 9 horse race. So 6.92, 6.2 are the 2 best odds horses in here. And it looks like this one obviously is a 4. But you'll see this, and it's kind of where you can take gambles as a new user for $5. If you just go, you see one, it's like this horse right here. Let's imagine there's no races run. It's 7 stars. And then this one is looks like 7 as well, and it's the lowest odds. So if none of the horses have ran and this is $5, like hop in here, maybe take a gamble here. It might finish last in the claimer, and then that's a data point that you didn't have before the race started, but it could be off distance, etc. And so what kind of got you into claimers or inspired you to race them?
Yeah, I was just looking through the race history. So when I bought a bunch of my really cheap ones, like I ended up buying a bunch of just absolute glue sticks that I just wanted to enter in races.
Yeah.
And so I would just look in their race history to see what they were running, what the other guys were running. And so I started seeing those claimers popping up. And then, so once I started seeing the claimers, it was like, I just did more research on the claimer series just to make sure I understood it. And then I was like, okay, great. And so I try to enter it at a price level. I look at it, I'm like, all right, am I fine with losing this horse at that price? And absolutely, I think this one was like 80
Yeah,
Derby.
you paid $1 for it.
Yeah. And so that one, this one was one I was just like, hey, I just wanted to get racing reps with just trash. And so that's why I started looking at the claimers.
Yeah, and I think like spending $1, it's how you're going to learn. I mean, taking cheap avenues to learn is important. Like really, I kind of try to find quality stuff and go small. But one of the things is you don't know quality because you're new, right? So like the only way you're going to do that is discovering and racing, watching the race. It looks like you already won one here. And so, yeah, I mean, a $5 claimer, you bought it for $1. If someone would have got it and claimed it for $5, you're 5xing your profits. This is really the beauty of claimers, and I'm really happy because as a new user, like there's a lot of avenues to attack, and these claimers are really a good avenue. And so next season, what you can do is basically see the claimers that get an early win or two. And if you can kind of think that they'll keep winning and be at the top of this leaderboard, the top 50 people on the claimer leaderboard get $100. And
Cool.
so that they've kind of designed that, and I really like that because the claimers has to be a very good onboarding tool, and it's a really good way for people to kind of enter cheaply and kind of have less risk, which is important while you're learning the game.
Yep.
So it's kind of cool that you're already doing that. And like, that's something that I always tell people. I really kind of like also that, you told me your budget and, you're not spending your budget right away. You're getting a lot of information cheaply and learning. And so what kind of have you learned from purchasing these glue sticks, as you called them?
Yeah, I mean, and I was playing around too. Like I looked at, and I don't remember which horse or all of them, but I was looking at trying to understand. Was the guy that had it before, was he running it well? A
Yeah.
lot of the times I'd look and the horse would have only been run in 10 furlongs, right? And so then I'd go back and I'd look at the parents and it was like, where were they having their success? And so if the parents were having their success all on long distance, then I was like, okay, I guess I get it. But then, occasionally then I was looking at that. It took me a little bit, but the fleet figures. So I look at that and I'm like, all right. So I ran a horse at a 4 furlong just to test it, and he gets a 48. Right. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well that clearly was not the right distance, but I was just, but that was a learning data point for me because now, okay, it was very tangible. I see why. And then I also looked and I was like, okay, well, was it only because of the soft? Well, no, he's had some, he had a 71 on sloppy, right? So like,
Yeah.
that's kind of as I was going through all of these, me racing them is me then back testing like the decision, like why did I pick this distance? How did the firmness affect this race? And so it's been nice just doing it on horses that, yeah, if he won, cool, like it was kind of exciting, but like it's not like, I mean,
Yeah, for a
like,
dollar, $2, this is just more data points than excitement right now.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
like I was
smart.
excited when
Even your
Perm won.
initial response there, seeing the 48, like really they have made the fleet figures a very good indicator of where you need to run. And so the highest one it ever had was 77 on 12, and 77 for an S is a pretty good fleet figure. And in claimers, you're probably going to have higher fleet figures because the competition's a little lower. So it's almost like a dominance rating where if you just dominate, it'll be super high. And so then you might think, well, fuck, I got the best horse in the world. You go to stakes and you might run a 70. You just ran an 85 in a claimer. You take it to a stakes where the big boys are and you finish 8th out of 10 and you have a 70. And so the fleet figures are mainly to help you figure out where to race your horse. And it's kind of cool to hear you say that because obviously whenever I'm telling a newcomer to kind of, or they DM me and they're like, hey, am I running this horse at the correct distance? And I'll kind of do exactly what you said. Look at the parents, look at the stats, look at the history, look at the data points. Because really, that's all the game is different data points. And you can see, like we were talking about earlier on these charts, I see a lot of this. So you can tell this is the lowest it is. I mean, 11, it kind of had a really bad one too. But as it goes longer, it kind of gets better, even though it's not a great horse.
Yeah, and I've noticed, so and now, I'm getting a little wiser in it. So I'll look at the race and then I look, okay, wow, it had a 77, but what was it? Oh, it was a 400 claimer. And then it has, you go down and look at an actual, like when it was in a non-claimer and it didn't perform well at all, right? I'm not,
Yeah,
maybe not
not
on that
this one,
horse.
but
And so, or wow, this one was in a 5K claimer and it kind of got its ass kicked.
yeah, both of the times it got tried to go up to high stakes, they probably saw second here, and this is my friend Tom, Blue Elder Stables, and he, like me, has so many horses that he can run a bunch in claimers, especially when we get kind of low preference outcomes that we know aren't a filly, and we're probably not going to use them for breeding. We're probably just sticking those things in claimers at the lowest level and then kind of gradually going up, kind of testing. It's kind of like that carnival game where the frog pops its head up and then it just gets beat in. And that's kind of where what happens whenever you jump in stakes a lot. So it's really cool because you're like super sharp new player. You can just tell that you're looking at the game the right way. You might not have even known a lot of this stuff, and you kind of come up with it on your own. So that's really cool. Obviously, when we start looking at where to go from here with your stable and like looking at that, like some of the things that I told you that I kind of always look for are these 1-year-old foals. And so let's go through which ones of these did you buy more recently? I think I am
I named,
chaos,
yeah, because I
right?
named a couple of them, so I'm trying to remember which.
Foals,
So,
Brave New World.
Chaos. I am Chaos. I think
Okay.
is one that you sent me.
All right. So we could just look at this one and we can kind of look at why A, I told you to buy it. Um, Looks like it's got good heart, which is, I think, becoming more and more valuable. When we are looking at an S plus on the marketplace and we're a new player, I set a filter on my tool for 6+ stars. So if I'm working with a guy like Cold Plunge or anybody out there wants to DM me, I can help you within your price range, kind of, or you can watch this and get some tips. But really, 6+ stars if you're at S plus, just baseline. If you're new and you don't have a lot of experience, like let's shoot for that. And in RD, it's really tough. So a lot of times I don't really tell new players to kind of go to RD. I kind of say go LD, go LT, go right turf, etc. And so let's see first off how much this horse was. It was 9K and looks like they paid 100 for it and just flipped it for a $12 gainer. Um, and so yeah, we're looking at $120 horse or whatever, 100 whatever. So speed is a nice little thing. And so one of the things, I guess I need to zoom out here a little bit so we can see it all together. But whenever I'm looking at these foals on the marketplace, I'm really looking at the median outcome. So if we're buying an S plus, in an ideal world, we would buy an S plus that has an S plus sire, S plus mare. Now, you're not really going to find a lot of these on the marketplace, and the way to get those is to get in the Discord or to get on Twitter and make friends with everyone in the community, especially people like me, people like One Eye Blind, Big Brain, Stables. There's a ton of people out there, Absolute Horsepower, that have a ton of horses and would probably give you a little bit better deal, etc. But a lot of the horses that are sold are these S and S pluses. And in my personal stable, some of these turn out to be my best racers. And so there's a lot of variance in the breeding. And one of the reasons I kind of told you that I thought this was a decent gamble, and I kind of say that because the risk versus rewards. This is a filly. So you're a new stable, you don't have a filly to breed from. Our absolute worst case is this horse loses its first 3 races, it finishes last. We realize this horse isn't great. You can either make the decision to go to claimers or park it. You can go to benchmarks. There's a lot of areas. These benchmarks are kind of cool for S plus because if your S plus really stinks, it could have a fleet figure as low as 65. And so with those, I'll come down here after 3 races and enter these low
Oh,
stakes,
interesting.
trying to kind of take advantage. But you also have the upside, in my opinion, if you got a pretty fortunate roll, like let's say the start is actually an SS minus and you got SS minus speed. Well, you could be looking at a sprinter here, you know? And then the S plus stamina with the SS minus speed, you could be looking anywhere from 6 to 10 furlongs. This horse could be good. And then with this high heart median outcome, I really think that it gives you kind of a Hail Mary chance to win a major. And we've kind of seen horses be claimed for as little as $15, I think, who got third in a major this season. And so the market kind of is pretty bottomed out right now. I feel like you came in at a really good time. Like we've been at some really high valuations. Basically about this time last year was our peak, and Crown was about $2, I think. The marketplace like S minuses were selling for like 40K Derby. And so right now there is kind of a population issue, but with Crown being down, with the profitability and the game being a little down, I think it's just a great time to enter. I think you kind of came along at the exact right point, and that's kind of some of the things that I saw with this horse and why I'm willing, even myself, to buy horses like this for 80, $100. And yesterday I had a stream with Tom, Monkey Tennis, Wimbledon Turf in the game, who also really likes this. And so I just think for $100, potentially this thing could win $4,000. Like obviously it would be the outcome, and you're probably looking. I'm an odds guy, a poker guy too, so the odds of that are probably like in the 2 to 5% range. Like if we kind of put a mathematical quantitative on there, but your downside really is probably like $150, and that's the 10, $20 that we're going to spend to see if this horse can even race. And so have you kind of thought about where you're going to race this one to begin with?
I haven't even considered right now on like my foals and the racing strategy.
Yeah.
Frankly, all I've been thinking about was like my breeding strategy for come Monday.
Yeah. Well, Monday is racing, and then the following Monday is when breeding will start.
Oh,
So
got
it
it.
starts
Okay.
week 2, and I'm really happy they did that because week 1 is so chaotic, especially whatever. But let's see, you can see I've already got some horses that are registered. So whenever we
Sweet.
get off here, you can kind of look through and see. But we'll just look at this horse. This is a S plus that I have. It's an LD, and we can kind of look. It's a horse kind of similar to yours, where the S plus sire is
Yeah.
pretty good, and the S mare is, so-so. And so just look at this horse and tell me where you think the median stats are going to be best.
From a distance standpoint, or
Or
what do
just
you?
just raw stats. Like which stats are you
Oh,
looking at here and saying, well, I think,
yeah. I mean, I'm looking if because I've heard you guys talk about like stacking things too.
mhm.
So potentially, you'd hope you get that S plus start. I guess you're not stacking. I mean, speed probably going to be an SS minus. So maybe an S plus start, S plus, S minus speed. That finish though could jump. Yeah, I mean the finish could be an SS minus probably, and then maybe you get lucky on hard again. So
Yeah. And so
um,
really the median, you're looking at speed and finish are probably the best median. And one of the things that we think about speed and finish are 8 furlongs, really. At least whenever I have a horse, it seems like if I'm high in speed and high in finish, 8 furlongs is kind of where they come in. Or it could be 6, it could be 10. There's a lot of nuance in there, but that's probably, and we'll see. I think I chose 9 furlongs. So I'm also, and it's 100%. And so with your horse, it's being firm. You have 1.5 stars. Obviously, I'm going to look for a race, the simplest thing, weather, 40% or less. And since you have 6.5 stars, you might even want to look at 20% or 0% because you do have a pretty good amount of stars. And then just looking there, like we talked about, speed is probably your highest median outcome, and then you're probably looking at start. So for this horse, I would probably tell you try to find anywhere from 4 to 8. And really, if I chose a 4 and it didn't do good, then I would choose a 6 to 8. And
yeah,
so whenever I'm thinking about that range, and then like if I run a 4, the odds are not good, and then I run a 6, the odds are not good, and the results are not good, then maybe I'll even go longer. Even though the stats might not show it, the variance in the outcome definitely can be all over the place, and it could end up being a 10 to 12 horse. I mean, that stuff happens. It's a little more rare, and usually the median outcomes, your predictions are going to be pretty close, and so that's usually where you start.
and that's a good point. So I actually had gone and looked at. I mean, literally, like I think I saw on Twitter someone. I mean, last Saturday talking about you as the top stable or something like that. And I went and looked at some of your horses just to see like how you started running them, and I had noticed you do like a 10, a 7, like a 4 type thing. You were kind of staggering it down.
Yeah.
So that's what I ended up just doing with my training horses, was just trying to like, you're trying to, you're searching for that, to see where they're getting some traction.
Yeah, it
And
just
then
comes back to you, like earlier talking about data points. To me, I want different data points, and so another data point that you have is this fleet figures thing. So if your horse has a high number early, that means it's probably close to the back. And if this number, let's say it's 3, and then let's say late it would be 1. Well, if I was running this thing at 6 or 7, but it kept coming on late, then I probably will go longer. I'll try 8, 9, 10, etc. And those are some of another data point that I'm always looking
That's
at.
interesting. Okay.
Because I do believe that I'm pretty good at the racing, and I do have, and you said best stable. I don't think I'm the best stable at all, but I do race the highest volume. And so I think that racing the highest volume gives me a lot of experience. I think like anytime you're racing, I have 156 horses, and then what I do is if the horse isn't good, I'll just put them on the marketplace so they're not here. And I think eventually we'll get some ways to kind of hide the horses or put them in a different thing. But I have so many horses that like if I run like 3 or 4 races and I know the odds are bad, like they're the worst odds out of every race, the results are terrible, then I'll just kind of list it on the marketplace at something that I feel like I wouldn't mind if it's gone, but kind of just to get it out of my way. But
That's
definitely
clever.
the 2-year-olds, I think you got to spend a lot of time on your 2-year-olds to really figure out, where they're good. And we can kind of look at just my 2-year-old class is actually very good. My 3-year-old class were a bunch of donkeys. But what I like to do is even when I have a very good horse, like I know that I'm going to win 10, 11, 12, but, we have the free roll coming up, but I like running even after I've dialed in that, I like trying to see how wide that optimal zone is, because obviously the more flexibility, if you could go win at 7, 8, 9, then, you could race every single day. Whereas if you can only race at 10 and 11, then you probably will be getting in a race every 36, 48 hours type thing. So I definitely like to do that. I think that is really one of the things you can do. Like we could look at this horse, not very good. We can look at, I thought it was going to be really good. It's basically what you're looking for. If you see stuff like this type of outcome or this type of parent combo on the marketplace, and I don't know how many stars this had, looks like 3.5, 4, 6. So if this was on the marketplace for 100, 150 bucks, someone wants to sell it, I think snap stuff like this up. 2S plus parents, I think you have a high barometer. We can kind of look at stamina, the finish of this horse should be good, and that's probably where I went right away. Yeah, I went 8. And so let's just imagine this is the first race. Actually got not very good odds, really. So we can see that 1, 2, 3 horses have better odds than it, so it's whatever. And we got third, probably kind of outkicked our coverage. We went longer, and 11 didn't do well. Wow, this horse, let's see. I might need to go back longer, actually, too. Let's see where this 83 fleet figure was. It was at 9. Yeah, and so I guess lately, I could be running this horse kind of wrong lately, or I think what I did was just wanting to cancel out 4. So it seems like actually I have gotten this distance down. It looks like 7, 9, even any of this range is probably okay. And then I ran this 4 probably because it was one of the last races to run, but also because it gives me a data point that I know that it's not good at 4. And so there are times where I basically throw away money pretty much with the conclusion that it's probably not going to be good there, but I want a data point for sure. And so, and this is a 2-year-old, and I've probably been running it in benchmark some, no stakes, and I didn't qualify for anything. So I'll probably give this a shot at some of the majors or benchmarks. So like, since it's right on the number at 75 and it hasn't really been a winner, I could probably go, well, there's rain, so we can't go there. But in the new season, I definitely will explore this one a little bit more. And if it can't kind of be on that qualifier cusp by the time breeding is, I'll probably just retire and breed it. Yeah, let's get back to your stable. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. And then I also advise you to buy this horse, right? Full of Brave New World.
I think. Let's see here.
I think, yeah, $50. Oh yeah, I guess it was listed for 80.
Yeah, I got the. Yeah, that was the one I negotiated down a little bit.
Cool. And if you're a new player, like whenever I built my stable, I basically started with like I think I had 3 or 4 tickets in October 21st or whenever the game first came out. I had like 3 or 4 tickets, and I kind of was like, whatever. I was busy investing in NFTs across the board, basically. And then when the beta started running in the fall and winter of 2022, I played the second beta. And then I kind of got the itch, kind of like you have. And I was like, all right, I'm all in. I'm going to figure out how to buy horses, all this stuff. And so one of my things was I would always negotiate. I would never buy. At that time, all the horses were tickets and they were on Magic Eden or whatever. I did actually spend 800 Solana on Big Nose Kate, one of my first S's. And it actually turned out really good because the guy I bought it from, I probably paid over retail, but I was just excited. And the guy that I bought it from ended up teaching me so much that I know about the game. And so that purchase, I mean, it paid off on the track and with the lineage and stuff. But yeah, and so negotiating is something that I would always tell people to try to do. Like if someone has it listed for $100, you know, sure, if you think it's a good deal, just buy it. But also you can add them on Discord, offer them 50, offer them 60, you know, like every nickel dollar you're saving is going to be kind of important because another way to think is every single horse that we buy, especially if it's a new horse, you're going to spend some money to kind of figure out where it can run. And most of the time that might not be coming back. So I really try to tell people, think about every horse costing you $20 or $30 your first 2 or 3, 4 races to figure out if it's even a winner or not. And so that's an added cost to this 50, and you basically got your exploration, as I call it, for free with your negotiation.
Yeah, I when you told me that, I was like, okay. I took you face value, and I offered him 3,500, and he said I'll do it for 4,000, and Derby obviously, and rest was history. And obviously, I saved I saved 3,000 Derby on that.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I liked about this is you have the base S plus, and in RTS the sprinter profile is coming in a lot more, but at the beginning it wasn't really there. And so to me, your base profile is S plus in start and speed. So it's kind of important to know where to start. Obviously, if you got lucky at the stamina finish, that would be great. But having S plus temper and then having the SS minus heart, it kind of gives you a good little baseline of probably S plus heart and then maybe a high S or a low S plus or a mid S plus temper. And so it's very easy to know where to start this horse. You can start at 4 to 7. And since this was a $50 horse, you could run maybe 2 maidens, 4 to 7 range, 60+% rain is kind of what we're going to be targeting. And then if they don't do well, you could just go to claimers. You can even go to let's say you drew bad odds and you had bad results, 4 to 7. Let's say you ran a 4, you ran a 7. Both of them were kind of donkey fleet figures. You could just take this thing to like a $30 claimer, see how you fit against those type of competition, and at worst case you'd be out $20-$30. And that's kind of how I think new players should approach the game is if you think your horse is a loser and you're pretty good at predicting where it should be good, kind of cutting losers quick or at least trying different avenues to race is really important. You can't just keep hitting your head against the wall trying to force a result. Sometimes you got to look at, all right, the horse isn't very good. Let me just go try to race against worse competition and see if I can make money there. And then in a way, you kind of race it to the bottom. Now, as a new stable for you, you might not want to run this in claimers, especially being an S plus. But if it was an S minus, you probably would. But you might have some breed value here, especially for internally and stuff. So it's kind of just a decision you'll have to make as you learn the game and your different methodologies. I mean, you also might get to the third race and be like, this Sowers guy's an idiot. I can't believe I bought this. I'm going to go floor this in a $10 claimer or something, which might be the best thing. Like a lot of times, stop racing a horse is a good financial decision. It stinks. We all like to race. But if all the data points are telling you it's not a good racehorse, you either need to change your strategy, that's where you're racing, what distance you're racing, and sometimes that is sitting a horse. And that comes back to the agent. There's a lot of horses that I sit early in their two if they're not good. I'll run them again late in their 2-year-old. I'll try them again 3-year-old. Usually if they're not good by then, I'll retire.
I mean, the advice on that I think is going to be a hard one. There's like this desire of hoarding, or you're like, well, I might need that, or you know, it's. But you know, we talked about it before we went live. Is, you know, I cut bait last night with a horse that I bought, and I bought him to race, and it was one of my first horses. I realized over the last week, just in the last week, how little, you know, like it was a bad decision, and I just cut bait. I retired him. Not going to keep, you know, lighting money on fire racing this guy, right?
And which one was it?
Lie Down Early.
Lie Down Early. All right, yeah, you actually reached good finish. Okay, yeah. So this is a horse. Obviously, you came in, you bought. How much did you pay for it?
I think it was like 800, maybe 900.
Oh, here. Oh, yeah, that was 15. Someone bought it for 300, and then they sold it to you for 800. There are a lot of flippers out there, and I mean, if you're really new and you want to be cutthroat and guarantee make money, you could probably do that. So yeah, and then what were your results here? Oh yeah, just dead last, and this is exactly what I was talking about, kind of racing the horse to the bottom. This S plus, sure, you got it for $10. It looks like you went $15 claimer, then you went $10 claimer. You got really bad results. If we now actually, when you retired this horse, I have a lot of these where I'm like, fuck, if I would have ran this thing at 11, 12, I probably would have had better results. And let's look at the chart. Yeah, I guess it wasn't really that good there either. Yeah, you cut bait on it. And like I told you, I don't know that this will really have any type of stud value, but click on that, put it out to stud button, 4K. See if you get some people. I would also say that like a lot of people come in and they'll take a stud like this, like you had, wasn't good on the track. And if we look at the stat profile compared to RDF, it's like just not good enough, right? And so a lot of people will still choose to breed with this horse internally. And if you have horses that you're doing that with, you're kind of costing yourself opportunity costs. You might be taking a cheaper way, but not going to some really good horse versus you're kind of wasting a breed. And so I think people do that often where they would almost be better not breeding at all. Rather than, you know, going in-house to a horse like this. And I mean, yeah, it just doesn't have the stars and the output to really be a good stud, but you low risk, didn't lose a lot, learned decent amount.
Yeah, and it was funny because so then, you know, I went on a buying spree of, you know, so I started buying when I started that breeding was going to end. So it's like, oh, I need to get a bunch of breeds in, you know, because I only have a week, so it'll be good. That way, you know, I don't, you know, I can basically cut almost a season off, right? If I can just do it right now. So what I ended up doing was I start going through, and I think I bought Leader, Pearl, Susie, and Artie, all kind of the same night. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to breed with these. But then, so then I started looking, I was like, cool, like now I got to go find a stud. So rather than trying to just go on the, you know, and breed with something epic that was out there, so then I just started buying, and I would look at the bloodline and I was like, this looks clean. And then I would I'd go to the breeding thing and it'd say inbreeding detected. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. So then I'm like, okay, now I've got to go find a different one. And so like I ended up wasting like a lot of money, basically just trial and error, almost like going through the marketplace, just trying to like, you know, I didn't have like I didn't know how to filter. And then finally I was like, oh, now I know how to
you were buying a stud, then you turned out it was an inbreed. So you couldn't even use that stud to begin with. All right.
Correct.
So,
So
do you remember the stud? Well, we could just break that down real quick too, because as a new person, this has been probably the toughest thing. And, you know, the tool you use, you can actually go to the marketplace, put in your mare into that colt marketplace, and it'll tell you inbreeding before you buy it. So that's something to know with your tool that you have that I use as well. But one of the things you can do, if you're just using the game and you have no tools, is just looking back through the great grandparents and the parents. Basically, if you have the name or the icon of anything in the bloodline, it's going to be an inbreed. So Primetime is a really popular
Oh, that
bloodline.
horse literally was the bane of my existence.
Yeah, it kept
Trying to
blocking you
find
everywhere.
every single horse was getting blocked by it. And what ended up happening was like I was thinking I was doing it right, so like, but I was just looking here. So finally, I was like, screw this! I'm costing myself money in my kind of rush. So I ended up just making an Excel sheet and building out the lineage so I could actually look at it. But even then, like it was such a pain. And then I realized I could go and filter and do exclude certain horses or certain
And
bloodlines.
they just added that, and that's something that we've begged for. I mean, basically, like the tool that I use, this guy just every single thing I ever asked for, he put in, and so it's really cool. But definitely, if you're in RG, excluding primetime is kind of like a key. Like, and so
It was
getting a
like that
horse,
black pencil, I think. Um,
yeah, Black Pencil, I think was a unique horse. So let's see if Butthole. This is yeah, there it's Black Pencil. So this horse, Shockwave, actually came from Primetime, and Primetime was the only 9-star RDF. Well, there was another one, Lolly's Legend, but that was a female. And so they made a natural combo, and that's why this guy Solonot, he had the best studs to start the game. And he doesn't really have the best studs nowadays, but he definitely started with them, and they definitely give you kind of high preference upside. So they definitely are in, most everyone's bloodlines. And then this Black Pencil horse, it was one of the very first unique horses. And if you kind of go back to its lineage, both of these were very unique bloodlines. And so bloodlines still matter. And it's kind of cool to hear you talk about them because I don't really pay attention to them anymore just because I use that tool so much. And there's a lot of variety. Like when we first started this game, you talk about being blocked by bloodlines. You were blocked by primetime everywhere. It was impossible. I made one of the first S pluses that didn't have them. It was Patriarch. And I was so excited about this horse because it was the first S plus where it had no primetime and it had none of 23 or 22, any of the popular bloodlines. There was 4 popular bloodlines. And so that's really kind of why I fell in love with the game too. I really like the idea of bloodlines and not being able to screw your sister or your uncle, like how that screws you up. And so yeah, that's really important, and I'm glad you brought that up as a newcomer. And so some of the breeds that you actually ended up doing, did you paid for this breed or no,
I
you
bought,
bought it?
yeah, I was an idiot. I
Yeah.
bought all of my mares and studs to try and match them up. And, it wasn't even based, I think I ended up, not getting the best horses, the best buys. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is one I found that would finally breed. And I just had like such a strong desire to just get some breeds in.
That's
And
perfect because that's like a common mistake that I always would tell people. That's why I tell people start racing, buy some horses, and you do what we all did. When I first came in, I did that eventually too, buying a big value stud. But, race the game a little, take breeding slow. Like, it's cool that you made this mistake because you did the classic mistake of, I have mare, let me buy a stud in-house. And so let's see what you paid $20 for it, right? And I could tell you, looking at this stud, yeah, it costs you $12 to make, but it probably cost you, I don't know, $35 in opportunity cost or something, because I think if you take this horse to its best, let me just tell you where I would have taken it. Oh, and so one of the things that I've kind of wished that they would do is you just take the link, you go to the breed barn, you have some place here for the link, you insert your filly, then it automatically cancels out all the horses that are in breeds. That would be really cool, and that's kind of what this tool does. So for $50, I want to go to, you have 5.5 stars on this filly. So really, I would tell you, if I'm going to breed this thing today, I want to go to a horse that has at least 7, preferably even more. And so that's going to get me on this horse probably. And so this horse was $50 to breed with. And so when you compare your outcomes, and not
Mm-hmm.
only that, like how much you're going to cost yourself going to that other outcome versus if you got lucky on this outcome, where if you kind of match stars with this, and let's say you end up with three in the right, let's say you get lucky, you get three in the dirt, and you get two on firm. Now you have an 8-star horse, and then let's just imagine, you get the median outcome, you get SS minus heart, you kind of get SS minus speed, SS minus start. You might have a sprinter there that could compete, and at worst case, if it's a filly, you got kind of a good little breed base. So I think like that's something that I would always encourage people is kind of, especially when you don't have a ton of horses. When you have a ton of horses like me, but I've spent so much money, I think I've probably always ran negative in breeding. Like I've been a real big advocate for going outside my barn and getting other people's good stuff. So you see this season, I mean, I'm generating a lot of stud fees, so I'm not going to discount the fact that that helps me a lot whenever I'm bringing in stud fees to kind of fork over, more money, but kind of running negative 3,000 in breeding. And that's because the opportunity cost that I talk about, I think it's so important to go after, especially with the top assets. Now we can have an argument, that your horse might not be a top asset, this leader of the wind. And so, but still, if you can go to a horse for $50, that's the min cost. So you might as well just go to the best one for $50,
Yeah.
And so that's something that I could work with you next season, and kind of maybe that can be part 2 of this little beginner series. And so what other questions do you have before we get out of here? I know it's already been 80 minutes. Time flies.
Yeah. So season starts on Monday, and now, you said it's racing for the first week. So I actually have a bit before breeding happens. What's the game plan? Walk me through how I should approach Monday, this next 7-day stretch in the game.
I would keep what I would do is like, if you have bought these low star horses and you're not getting good results, or you're getting really uneven results and it's looking like you're going to lose money, just kind of cut bait or take them to claimers and just race them as if they're worth zero, like go, not this horse specifically perm, but if it's an S or lower, and like this horse Dust Till Dawn, to me, like whenever I would just say, don't race this horse at all. Dust Till Dawn. These types of horses that have like less than 4.5 stars are basically dead. Like it doesn't matter where you race it. You can see Fleet Figures 59. What you could do is race it in a hardcore race next season at 3, but even then it's not going to win. So you're just going to lose money regardless on this horse. So cut that one off. Don't race that. This one, it's got decent stars. You can keep experimenting and racing that to learn. Like, let's see where you've been racing this horse. Claimer, perfect. Yeah, I would just keep racing claimers. And looks like 6 fast was your best. Yeah, and see, like whenever you look at, this is kind of what I consider, like I've talked to you about stacking and I've talked to you about staggered. So this would be a staggered breed where every single one is opposite, right? Like it kind of is S plus versus an S minus, which is going to get you kind of median outcomes. And really, if you can stack two, like let's say stamina and finish, you kind of have a more reasonable chance at winning. Where when you stagger these things, especially if you're not at the very top, if you're at the very top, I like staggering because ideally it creates the highest possible ceiling you can have. But here you kind of middle yourself in these middle grades. And so I would definitely just keep racing this in claimers. And even if you don't do very well in these $5 claimers at 3-year-old, I would probably race this in hardcore too. And the hardcore races, do you know about those?
Yeah, I mean, as of yesterday, I asked somebody because I wasn't sure if when it said it sends it to pasture, if that means it's
gone,
kills it, or if it means you can breed it. And they're like, no, it's gone forever. So
yeah.
It sounds like, reading you guys on Twitter today, I think it was on Twitter.
It got hit. Yeah.
You're all talking about how, though, it could just be a good way to filter out, though, as opposed to all these people just dumping crap on there and cluttering up the marketplace, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's supposed to operate kind of like a progressive jackpot, basically. You know, you enter a horse for, I think next season it'll be $1 and $2. If you win the race, you survive, you take the winnings. All the other horses go to pasture, which means they go to third time pasture. They're completely out of the game. They can't breed. And so you see a lot of colts running these. Um, and then, you know, you get the chance if you hit a 3 dice roll in a row or whatever, you win the jackpot. So it's a very, and so like what I do is I race them because I have a lot of horses, or I have a lot of horses that might not be doing good in claimers. But for this season, I'm done racing them. Like, actually, I still have some that are registered, and I hope that they survive or whatever. But to win $40 versus winning, 1,200 or whatever is a big difference. So each season, this gets rejuvenated by our good sponsor Baxis, and I've been drinking a little wine from Baxis tonight, and they give us $500 in this jackpot every season. And it kind of is just another avenue. Like, really, one of the toughest parts for the game that I think is like how to make or how to create avenues for all these horses, especially not very good horses, play. And next season, they're going to have these purse caps. So if you've won more than, I don't know the amounts, you can't enter that race. And so I think that that's also important that we kind of learn how to incorporate these low star horses, because personally I know, like, you, I think, have ran pretty hot. Like with this horse, 2 and 5, or the owner, I mean, I would say that it has really good start and that's kind of helped it. But most of the time, these 5-star horses and less basically don't profit. You know, most of them just kind of lose money or get sat, and then you retire it and hope that it has some amazing stat profile that you're willing to take the chance on lower pref if you hit those stats. But there is kind of like that meta in the game where, all right, well, what do we do with all these low star horses, right? Like, A, we can just quit breeding them and quit racing them, or B, maybe they'll find different avenues to do, etc. And so let's see what else for you. I mean, really, I think your whole strategy is really good. Just like low investment, getting a lot of data points, getting reps, and then if horses aren't winning, you know, you can obviously always DM me, ask me, hey, am I running this the right spot? Should I run it somewhere else? This one, you know, let me make sure you're running. Yep. All right, you got that. So like if you have a claimer horse that's lower than S plus, just make sure you're running it in the grade restricted claimers, which you're definitely doing. This horse, let's just look. Yeah, I sell a lot of my horses like this, and it took me a while to learn because I used to buy these like from Wolof and other people. Wolof is one of the sharpest people in the game, and he played their old game. But what I've seen now that I have 2 years of experience, these kind of down rolls, so you have two S's and it created an S minus. Well, that means that you had a bad roll, like you had a bad outcome because you're below the median. And then you got to think about, well, where did you kind of go below the median? Usually it's going to be the lowest of the two parents. So you probably have low start, you probably have low stamina, and then you probably just have S minus heart and temper. And so this horse, you would expect speed and finish. So I would tell you 6 to 8 is where this horse probably runs. So maybe you can try it. It looks like you did try it at 6, or they tried it. But you can try it in this middle range in the claimers. So you could go 7 to 9 range for the cheapest claimer. Or you can try an allowance as well, because S minuses get really good advantages. If we look at, this is something that I'm always talking about in chat, is that S minus grade. Don't be afraid to buy stuff there, especially if it's like $5, because you have a lot of avenues as an S minus in the game right now. You can come to these allowance type things where higher grades are getting more weight. So you're getting 6 pounds off, they're only getting 4 pounds off, which means your S minus is 2 pounds lighter. So pretty much I never race S pluses in these allowances, and they're set up for S and S minus horses. And they really favor S minus horses. So if we go look at the leaderboard, and you just tell me if you want to cut out or whatever. I
No,
could talk about
you're
stuff
fine.
forever.
I'm learning here.
Okay, so we can go look at allowance, and I'll go full screen. You can see, well, what horses are doing the best in allowance, and you don't see a single S plus up here. It's all, and then there's the A plus allowances as well. I would just tell you, just focus on purple S minus and higher. But basically, S minuses can be claimers, and it looks like S's are really the best claimer horses on the leaderboard. So that's pretty good. And then allowances, S minuses can compete there. Guess where else S minuses can compete? They can compete for the grade restricted. They can't really compete for these graded and benchmarks. And then also there's a new series next season. I'm trying to find it. God, it's from Blue Exotic. Anyway, there's a new allowance series next season that is for 5-year-old plus. And the allowances are set up just like that one I just showed you. So if you have a 5-year-old S minus, you can compete in these new series, and it's $700 free rolls for every preference except for left turf. So the S minuses, especially if you see any in claimers while you're kind of learning this game and you see a 5-year-old doing well, then you could go race that in that series and potentially win $300 off an S minus this season. Obviously, what I tell you to do is go buy these S pluses, because the highest possible way you can win is the majors, winning like $4,200 next season in the 3-year-old majors. So I always kind of shoot for the stars, but there's a lot of little niche areas throughout the game that you could kind of find. And I think like a lot of one of the guys that I've kind of talked to this season, he really just monitored the claiming game. And I mean, this guy TL in Pirates kind of crushed it. This Beetlejuice Stables has been dominating the claiming wins. And I think what Beetlejuice does, and I'm going to get him on the stream maybe Monday or next week and talk about his strategy, but he basically finds these early winners, and then he'll claim them and then race them upwards in claims or whatever. And so you can kind of see that after this one got 5 wins and was insured, well, these guys keep claiming this back and forth, huh? Oh, they both, that's so funny. So him and TL and Pirates both tried to claim this horse, which is a filly, and basically they claimed it for a little under $100, and they're gonna get $100 in a week. So they're basically getting a filly paid for.
Wow, just a little arbitrage there.
Yeah, that is arbitrage, and I mean, but there are bigger arbitrage opportunities on the claimers market. If you can imagine, you learn the game, you spend some time, and then you start watching these 2-year-old claimers. You see the good odds, high preference. You take $5, $10 shots. It wins the race. Then you go put it in a $30 race. Then it wins that. Then you go put it in the 5K claimers. It wins that. Now you're looking at the leaderboard. You're looking at a lot of different things. And so that's why the claiming series is so good for a newcomer, because it's probably the easiest way to double and triple your money if you're sharp. Obviously, there's a lot of risk, in every part of this game, but claiming is a lot of the lower risk because it's the lower buy-ins, etc. So what else?
I think I'm going to have just a lot of questions now on that'll just be bouncing off you on Discord. And I guess my advice to the new people, if you just started in the last little bit, right, is just don't be shy. Like I think probably the thing that's helped me the most, just in the last just a short amount of time, was putting myself out there in the Discord, and then on Twitter, and no dumb questions, because I have zero pride in whatsoever. Like if I don't know a question, I don't know what I'm talking about. One, not afraid to ask, and then I've found that everybody is super responsive, and they don't mock you, or you're not chastised for wasting people's time with dumb questions. And so I think that's been really, really helpful. And I already can just tell, like, I'm just so much leveled up even the last 24 hours, like I got that tool that you're talking about, and all I've been doing is just comparing and studying, potential breeding partners and trying to understand like where's the areas that I want to build this horse. Is this a horse that I kind of have to build him over 2 or 3 seasons because, whether it's the prefs or, he's got an S minus on temper and he's got an S on heart, but he's super strong elsewhere. Like, do I prioritize the back half of those stats? So there's just different, things now that I'm really trying to take into effect and like think through how am I trying to build, build these horses and maybe not as rushed of a process as I was doing last Saturday and Sunday,
Yeah.
but more trying to think 1 or 2 seasons out.
You actually have a possibility of getting an SS minus your first season breeding. I was just looking. This is a good purchase, for $30 right here. Obviously, knowing what we know now, we probably would have went somewhere else, but this has decent stat profile
This is
here.
I'm most proud of these two right here.
Yeah, the Artie in the Fold and Marine Grande. I mean, really what you got to do is you got to get lucky. You need an uproll and temper, and then you just need to catch this S plus heart, because if we look at the combo, SS minus then S plus across the board, and then so it's really easy to envision that you could have SS minus in start speed and stamina. And so then even if you hit S plus and finish in heart, you could potentially hit the SS minus. So I'm really rooting for you here to do that.
And
It would be
when do we find out? Do we
we
find
find out
this
on
out?
Monday, and that's
Okay.
what's so fun about this game. And like, I think it's really cool to talk to someone like you because it just takes me back to when I first learned about the game. And I think that there is a bit of fatigue on the OGs. Like, I think a lot of people were so used to making so much money. Like, there was a big stimmy period where we were making tons of crown, etc., that they kind of lose sight of what's kind of going on now. But what's going on now is really important. Any type of NFT or Web3 project that has come has went through this stimmy stage, and really none have survived. Like zero. Like, there's not a fucking game out there that has survived. And I would argue that this game is surviving. And so right now, what I think is occurring is just this little correction mode where, the crown is a little bit lower, and then, the profitability might not be as where it was a year ago, but it's in a more sustainable path. Like, one of the things, and I know Ian and the team probably would have done some things different as far as how they released crown per race, etc., but the game and the genius of it, the crown staking, getting all the rake, the marketplace, the breeding fees, Ian and the team at third time, they just put all that back in the racing environment. And so there's a lot of stuff that I really love about the game. Obviously, to kind of attract people like you who come from a finance background and are thinking about the strategy of it and just kind of diving into it, it just takes me back to that beginning. And I'm still there. That's why I'm doing this content. I still love this game. I still love the strategy of it. And even this season, I mean, this season is probably not even one of my best seasons. Sure, like if you go look at this season 25 leaderboard, you would think like, oh, I'm number one. But I'm probably like number 20 this season in profitability as far as netting out Derby or whatever. But I know next season's going to be good, and it's a long-term game. And I've been kind of building for the long term, now for 2 years, and I'm kind of catching up to a lot of these guys who had way more assets than me. And so for you, you can get there quickly, but it's still going to be a 6-12 month timeline before you're really competing for majors consistently, before you're understanding the game. And so I think like patience is important, but just kind of understanding like the core of the game, I think is just so brilliant in the fact that you can bet, you can have all these different avenues to race. And then, as we start to attract more users like yourself, especially with the Derby coming up, and hopefully has got simulcast where you can bet. And really, like, I hope that we're on casino floors. To me, that's the biggest unlock, because that's the market that is willing to gamble.
Yeah.
And like, taking it to the market is really important. And it's been so close a few different times, just in my circle or different investors that were kind of close that was like, man, we're really close to all you need is a Twin Spires, all you need is a DraftKings, all you need is one of these huge players. And we do have Block Bet, which I can't wait to see how we use those guys. An online casino, I think, is another great avenue to get wagering going. And really, wagering going is a great unlock. And you said you're not really a gambler, so you haven't done much wagering on the races or what?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I had gambled really early in my life and got very lucky. I shouldn't have won. Like I got a little over my skis and I got bailed out on a huge win. And I swore that night in the casino, I was like, I'm never gambling again. I could have lost my shirt and everything. And I was like, hey, this is my sign. And I've never gambled since. I think that was like 2005.
That's sharp. I mean, a lot of people always assume that I'm like a big gambler, right? Like, because I play poker for a living since I was 17. I play DraftKings, Ando, etc. But I hate casino games, and I hate like anything that I know mathematically I'm a loser at. And I've definitely gambled recreationally and maybe on some sports bets here and there, but as like a core part of my lifestyle, I'm not. And I approach this game the same way. I don't really bet a lot. I know they're introducing a new betting leaderboard, but I partake in this game for the strategy part of it
Yeah.
because I just enjoy trying to do something impossible and making money at it. And I think that this game really could blossom to be like the next DraftKings, the next Poker Stars type of big boom, because there are a lot of horse racing fans out there, but there's also a lot of strategy fans, etc., who would just love to understand and play a game like this.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's where I see the upside and what originally got me into Zed, right, was kind of that intersection. Well, so I was really big into like Madden, where you would play the ultimate team and I would buy all the packs of the cards, right? And then you'd build this team up, but then the second, like, the new Madden 25 comes out, well, my Madden 24 cards are worth nothing, right? And I had zero ownership. And so like I love that concept of you have this ownership of it, and it's what you decide to do with it and how you decide to play the market. Like I always thought that they should have done the Madden where it's like they come out with a Patrick Mahomes and there's only 1,000 of them, and he's a rated 75 rookie, and you can decide to buy more, and next thing you know, like in 5 years, he's a 99 overall. And if somebody wants a Mahomes, they got to pay $1,000, right? And it's those kind of elements, and this is exactly that for me. Like I love, gosh, like I sit here, like since I've gotten introduced, like my work has suffered because I sit here and on this computer and I'm just scouring the market. I'm now that I got this tool, I mean, I've spent the last like 24 hours, probably 12 of them on that tool, just learning it, looking at all the horses, right? Trying to think of like the combinations. And it's so much fun, right? And I think there are a ton of people out there that just want to kind of put their brain to work, and it's very validating, right? Like it's all you. So there's RNG to it to some extent, right? But like you do enough of the right things, you'll see the reward, or you do enough of the wrong things, right? You're gonna see it, right? And you'll know where you stand. And so that's what I like. It's like I can execute a strategy, and over the course of a month or 6 months or a year, depending on these, like I'll know if my strategy was good. And so that's super validating. It's engaging, and I love. It's so funny. Like I said, I've never been to a live horse race. I think they're cool. Like I always kind of scoff at people because whenever the Derby comes around, we have like a Derby party here where I live, and it's always like the one day where you have all these people that pretend like they know what they're talking about on horses, and they're all obsessed. I'm like, stop. Let's stop pretending. I've been your buddy for 20 years, and you've never once mentioned horse racing.
Yeah, I actually got to go to me and my wife. It was funny because before the game went live, Ian kept talking about he had this really big thing. And my wife was like, well, what if it's Churchill Downs? And I was like, well, it's not going to be Churchill Downs. Are you fucking crazy? Like, this is a Web3 game. And then it turned out it was, and her intuition was right. And I was like, well, I actually said before, I was like, well, if it's Churchill Downs, we'll just go meet them at the Derby and go. And then that ended up happening. So me and her went to the Derby. I took my mom. It was first horse race I'd ever been to. And we were kind of in the infield because I met the team and stuff. So I want to go back and do it the box style or whatever. But kind of what you were talking about, how the strategy all paying off. I remember I've had a coach now, man, for 15 years. A personal coach that I've used for poker planning, for pretty much all of my endeavors in life. I kind of bounce off him. And I remember it was season 23, 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago. And I just had the most incredible run. I think I won like pretty much what Stins did yesterday, and I don't know if you saw it, but Absolute Poker just won just incredible amount. And I kind of did that in season 23 where I just won. I think I got first, third, and fifth in the left dirt gallop, and then I won the Kentucky Derby. And I think I got second and fourth in 2 of the RD majors. So I profited like 18K in the month. And I was talking about it with my coach because it was funny. I'm actually working on this other really big, amazing thing that I really can't tell anyone about. But I was telling him about it. And then he was like, well, how are the horses and how is everything going? I was like, well, I had the best season I've ever had. I got so lucky. And he's like, Mike, you didn't get lucky. It's just all the time you put in. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I ran super hot, but obviously all that hard work, all the obsession with the game paid off, and it can definitely do that. And I think like it's just like anything else in life, what you put into it's kind of what you can get out of.
Yeah, I mean, you're living proof of it, right? And it's what's neat about this too for a newcomer is you have 2 ways to look at it. You can be extremely intimidated when you see all of these mature stables with all these big time horses, and you click over and they have 16 million in winnings, and it's just like, oh gosh, and I have 16,000, right?
Yeah.
Or you can say, okay, it's doable and it's achievable, right? So
Yeah.
it's like kind of the 2 different mindsets. So I just look at it as like, okay, my first goal was I just want to get a win, like a paid win, just not my trainer horse.
Yeah.
So let's get a win, right? And then once I got a win, like I proved to myself, all right, well, we can get a win. So if we got one, we can get another one. And now it's just a matter of, now it's just a time game, right? And so let's, it's a matter of and I look back, like a year has flown by so fast. So I'm like, all right, let's see where I'm at in 1 year with this. And I bet you, I didn't set goals, but
Yeah. You'll be in this top 10 or 15.
Is it 100 wins? Who knows, right? Is it 300 wins? I have no idea, but like I just know it's not going to be 2 anymore, and I know that my winnings will be higher than 16,000. So it's that slow burn, and this is these are the fun things, and I posted the Discord to somebody. It was like, I'm a 42-year-old guy that. Typically I was, playing when we'd get our kids down. My wife would go watch Housewives, and I'd be playing Escape from Tarkov, the video game, and like that's what I would be doing. I'm like, now this is the next obsession, right? And my wife is a lot happier that I'm not playing video games. So it's healthier.
Even though you are kind of.
Yeah, but she was like, well, how's our horsies doing?
Oh, that's great. That's it. That's another beginner tip. Find a woman who will support your horses, because my wife she'll look at them and she'll be like, oh, he's so cute. I love that color. And then she's named half of them. Honestly, the bloodline that I've named after hers, it must be a late aging bloodline because they always reveal really good stats, but they never do anything on the track. So it's kind of a running joke now. But I think we'll definitely do this again, maybe in a few weeks, kind of check back in, see where you're at, and we could talk some breeding and stuff. But you're definitely a sharp newcomer, and I hope that a lot of other newcomers have gotten stuff from this. And then if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And then I'm going to be doing a stream Monday for the new season. I'm so excited about the new season. For pretty much 4 hours from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific. So come in, chat, ask questions. I'll be looking at everything from the horses that I got to the big races that day. And then we'll have several other guests like Mr. B. I think Beetlejuice might come on. Rolo. So I'm just trying to really get as many different people from the game on this show and get people to know them, because I believe that narratives kind of drive betting as well. Like, one of the things that I like what Netflix did was every single show they do, like if it's F1, if it's rugby, I'm not sure if you've watched all these, but I watch them and then I become a fan of that sport. And it's because I watched the equivalent of Housewives, in the male version of these reality shows, kind of
Yeah.
showing you the behind the scenes. And I think that if we show the behind the scenes of this horse game and we create these rivalries, like me and Kamish have this huge rivalry, the guy that owns Primetime, he was exactly what you're talking about. Whenever I first came in the game, he was the guy who had the most assets, had the best everything. And I was like, how do I get there? How do I beat him? How do I dominate him? And that's, I think, the whole fun of the game. And I hope that I can be that for whoever, because that really, I think, encourages competition. And that's kind of the beauty of this whole thing.
That's so cool. Yeah. There was a guy on the Twitter that when I posted it about this, he's like, "Oh yeah, I just joined as well." And so I just responded, I'm like, "Hey, feel free, reach out, and we can both compare notes and see who, compare, who made more dumb mistakes, right?"
Yeah.
It's
You're definitely going to find that in this community, like more than poker, more than DFS, like in almost every other avenue, people don't want to share their secrets. But most of the people that are in this game understand that, like, it is complex, so you do have to help people, but also the way that we all grow is to incorporate and get more players. And I think that that's really important, probably the most important thing that any of us could do at this point.
Yeah, the player base is the key to this thing, going on, right, to season 75.
Yeah.
I got a buddy I onboarded 2 days. I guess he opened a stable maybe 2 days ago. He raced in that rookie one with me.
Okay.
And then I've got a buddy who said he's opening up his stable tonight, and I just told him, like, I'll loan him, I was like, because he doesn't have the same budget as me, so I'm going to just start helping him with horses.
Yeah, and let me know, because if I have something on the market for 10, $20, I'll just ship it to his stable and he can put whatever he wants into it. Like these S minuses, a lot of times I'll just be listening for breed costs, because, I have so many horses. It's kind of like opportunity cost for me. The more I have, it kind of costs me money. So just even if I get a winner out to someone else or a loser, I mean, you never know what the outcome is, but that's part of the learning process.
Yep, absolutely. So, I think that'd be good. And, I think getting people onboarded and then getting them, set up with some stuff to have fun. Not all of the people that come on, they're going to be like, oh, wait, this is a little daunting. There's no instant gratification. I can't even find a race for 2 days maybe, right? And then they may leave and they miss that opportunity where all of a sudden, had they just gotten that one kind of taste of it, now they're hooked forever.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I'm pumped. I cannot wait. What time on Monday does when will we actually find out?
You know
Like,
what? We're having daylight savings. And every time we have daylight savings, I feel like the schedule changes a little bit. So I'm going to predict that it's 8 a.m. when the new schedule starts.
Pacific, or what time are we?
Yeah, Pacific. I'm
Okay.
Pacific.
Man, I've got a 9 a.m. meeting. I just looked at my calendar, and then I'm actually like wide open. I can essentially just work from home. So I'm pumped. I'm going to be watching your stream and
8:55 is the first one. Yeah, I think it's 8 a.m. is when our babies will be born and we'll be racing. But it could be 7 a.m. It's been 7 a.m., but I'm going to predict with the daylight savings time, we're going to go to 8 a.m. Pacific.
Okay.
Cool deal, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
and we'll talk soon.
And I'll put this up on YouTube probably tomorrow. So if anyone wants to learn or whatever, and obviously if anyone has questions, hit either of us up. We're here to help. Have a good night and a good weekend.
Take care. Bye.
All right, later.